So, good day everyone. We are the group 9 and we will present to you the topic of paraneoplastic syndrome. So, paraneoplastic syndrome or paraneoplastic, it is parallel, no? Parallel or next to neoplasia. So, it is a pathologic changes sa structure or function that develop secondary to and distant from the primary neoplasm. So, it is caused or result from the presence of cancer sa body. Pero hindi yung mismong physical cancer tissue on the affected area. So, secretions are affected most commonly arise secondary to hormonal or other cytokine factors produced by the tumor. So, and these tumors can be benign or malignant. So, sa epidemiology, species affected like cat and dog. So, in general, there is no sex predilection, but with few exception. For example, is the feline acromegaly. Associated siya with pituitary adenoma na nag-occur lang sa mga male cats. For genetic predisposition, it is rarely directly induced by genetic factors. So, occasional exception niya is the nodular dermatofibrosis. Associated siya with autosomal dominant heritable mutation noong specific gene, which is the Birt-Hogg-Dubh gene sa mga German Shepherds. So, yung affected dogs, they develop bilateral cyst or bilateral renal cyst, which is called cystadenocarcinomas. So, sa mga babae naman, they develop uterine leiomyoma. So, this leiomyoma are benign smooth muscle tumor na meron dun sa uterus. For clinical presentation, since yung clinical manifestations or signs ng paraneoplastic syndrome is medyo vague at tsaka secondary lang din naman siya with other associated disease. So, here are clinical presentation. We have hypercalcemia. So, sa hypercalcemia, the animal may suffer from polyuria and polydipsia. They appear lethargic with inappetence, vomiting from uremia. Cachexia, the animal has lost the body mass or pwedeng muscle wasting despite doon sa meron siyang enough na appetite. So, hyperviscosity syndrome, it depends sa organ system na affected. The animal may suffer from blindness, pwedeng maka-experience ng seizure and dyspnea. Hypoglycemia, the animal may experience depression, ataxia, and seizure. Myasthenia, gastroduodenal ulceration, pwede siyang naging anorexic and may suffer from hematemesis. Then, myasthenia gravis, this is secondary to aspiration pneumonia. So, the animal is weak. Pwede rin siya mag-regurgitate or maging dyspneic. So, hypertrophic osteopathy, the animal may experience lameness and appear as lethargic. Hyperadrenocorticism, meron ding polyuria and polydipsia, then merong bilateral symmetrical hair loss, tapos muscle wasting, at saka potbelly appearance. Next is acromegaly, meron ding polyuria and polydipsia, may weight gain, at saka nag-enlarge yung head at saka limbs. So, peripheral neuropathy, um, merong incontinence yung animal, incontinence sa urination as well as defecation. Next is superficial necrolytic dermatitis. Ito yung mga ulcerated cutaneous lesions, pwedeng makikita sa mga paws and maka-experience yung animal na painful doon sa paws nila or mga paw pads.
So, hello everyone. My name is Ralph Andre Bacuetes, and now let's move on to etiology. So the first one is hypercoagulation. So, what are the etiologies that are part of this? First one is the possibilities that the host is hypercoagulable. So there are many ways that this can happen in a certain patient. So I will explain it furthermore on the succeeding examples. So the next one is tumor-induced platelet activation. So in tumor-induced platelet activation, it can cause an increase in platelet activation and aggregation because those are what can tumors do. And it will contribute into making it a hypercoagulable state. So the next one is chronic inflammation associated with cancer. And it is common in cancers to have the chronic inflammation that can lead to an increased production of inflammatory cytokines. And then these cytokines can like stimulate, for example, the liver into producing more clotting factors in the body that can decrease the natural anticoagulants. And lastly is the coagulation disorder. So in coagulation disorder, these are diseases from the body which can affect the blood clotting activities. For example, is the von Willebrand disease, the deep venous thrombosis, and etc., which can harm the coagulation factor of the body. So next is hypercalcemia. So the most common metabolic abnormality, 10% of malignancies. So to some degree, these malignancies can also have the hypercalcemia. Next is the osteoclast activation that can trigger the resorption of the bone. So to further explain this, it can be in the endocrine, so the parathyroid hormone related protein, which are secreted by tumor cells. So it has the almost same effect of parathyroid hormone. Next is the paracrine, so local factors secreted from bony metastasis. This can trigger the resorption of bone and could also be a trigger of many factors to um, produce the resorption of bone and cause hypercalcemia. So the lastly part is the it can worsen the situation by the renal failure because of the released hormones or cytokines that can trigger many things that can cause the resorption of bone changes or metastasis in the part of the body within the malignancy. So now we have cancer cachexia. So the first one is the metabolic alterations. So there are changes in the metabolic state. So I will further explain it more in the pathophysiology. And next is the mast cell tumor. So this can lead to cachexia through the release of inflammatory mediators. Um, so mast cell tumors is directly directly connected to the cancer cachexia. And the other one is lymphoma. So lymphoma is the most common associated cancer with cachexia. So there is a widespread involvement in the organs and how these malignancies affect the body. So there are other also malignancies that can affect it, like the gastrointestinal tumor and the osteosarcoma, which are also connected from the etiology of causing the cancer cachexia. But I will further explain the most common ones. So bear with me in this etiology example, which is the anemia. So I'll explain it in a brief, concise, so it's going to be easy to understand. So first of all, at the top, there are the varieties that can cause inflammation. So there is infection, cancer, and immunotherapy. So these three can cause inflammation. And once inflammation is triggered, so it will release in the body, it will release the interleukin 6, the IL-6. So this IL-6 will trigger a response as it goes into the liver. It will trigger a defense response in the body. And the liver, which produce this peptide, the hepcidin. Hepcidin is the regulator or balancer of the iron level systematically. So it will decrease the iron absorption and increase iron sequestration. So both of this can both lead to iron restricted erythropoiesis. The next one that the inflammation can cause is the TNF, interleukin 1, and interferon gamma. So in these three of this, um, the tumor necrosis factor, IL-1 and interferon gamma, they can decrease the erythropoietin response to anemia. So another one is the renal insufficiency. It can also decrease the erythropoietin response to anemia. So these three can are only that's their actual response in the body. So they actually decrease the erythropoietin. So the decrease so there will be a less production of the RBC. So, as connected to this as well, there is the nutritional deficiency, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy. So, and also marrow infiltration. So, these three, given box examples at the right, including the TNF, IL-1, and IFN, they can cause diminished marrow response to erythropoietin. So, these examples can actually, in short, cause this response in the body, which can cause the anemia. So another one is hemolysis and bleeding. So parts in the tumor that can affect our body. So when there's hemolysis and bleeding, there can be decreased red cell survival. So all of this that I'm explaining, all of these factors are going through the cause of anemia in the malignancies. Thank you. Now, let's move on to the pathophysiology. So, in pathophysiology, the hypercoagulability, there is the increased risk of thrombosis and increased risk of pulmonary embolism. So, this can affect the proper hemostasis of the body. So the mechanisms included in here are extrinsic vascular compression or invasion of the vessels in the body. So this can cause the risk of thrombosis and pulmonary embolism because of the changes that happen in the body. So there is the tissue factor production by the tumor and endothelial cells. So in here, it explained is that there are more tissue factor produced, which can affect the platelet activation and the accumulation of it. So in this tissue factor, it can affect the thrombopoietin synthesis, which can increase um, the production, and it is not normal in the level of the body that can actually cause the risk and harm in the like causing thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. So this is not a normal reading in the body, and it can disrupt the hemostasis. So next is expression of phosphatidylserine. So it is part of which supports the activation of coagulation cascade. So it is part of phospholipids in the membrane, and it can be seen or read as a normal count. However, in this malignancy, when in the affected by the paraneoplastic syndrome, there can be a high reading the phosphatidylserine, and it is not normal, and it can affect the clotting factor or activations of the platelets. So, lastly, the inflammation mediated increase in factor 8, fibrinogen, and von Willebrand factor. As I said earlier, and from the earlier explanation, there is a very, very distinguished factor that affects the platelet activation, thrombopoietin synthesis, that can cause harm in the body, and it can also produce metastasis in other parts of the body, which is very harmful and will disrupt the proper flow in the body. So the pathophysiology of hypercalcemia. So there's the hypercalcemia of malignancy. So in this one, it is commonly associated with common malignancies that are with the same related processes that are like blood calcium levels that can rise as a result of tumor production of the parathyroid hormone related protein, which functions similarly to parathyroid hormone. So this can cause changes in the bone and can even cause a resorption and destruction of the bone when the malignancy or the tumor is attached in the bone. So, in the next slide, I will explain it briefly in the tubular form. So, in this tubular form, I will explain to you about the affected types of the tumor and their mechanism in the body with the hypercalcemia. So 80% of the breast and lung and non-Hodgkin lymphomas, these malignancies can actually trigger bone calcium release or the increase of calcium production and intake because of the parathyroid hormone releasing protein. So these malignancies release that protein to cause that disturbance or disorder in the body and the production of the calcium. So, next is there are some rare cases of malignancies which can actually produce parathyroid hormone. And once this is done, they can actually disrupt the bone calcium release and actually increase it, which can be dangerous and give more risk in the body or cause like resorption of the bone. So next is the some lymphomas can actually release a the form of a vitamin D with the same effect in the body as I said earlier in the explanation of our pathophysiology in the hypercalcemia. So this can trigger increased absorption of calcium, which can, of course, cause hypercalcemia and harm the hemostasis and the processes of the body. So this is because of the some lymphomas and malignancies that are affecting it. And lastly, 20% of breast, lung cancers and myeloma and prostate cancers can actually cause bone reabsorption. These malignancies, which attach to the bone or directly affect osteoclast, can cause osteolysis. And again, it can also cause bone calcium release, which is very harmful in the body and will not maintain a proper balance in our body. So now let's go to the pathophysiology of cachexia. So earlier in the etiology, as I said, there is the alteration of metabolism. So first one here is the body metabolism is significantly altered by the cancer. So this can lead to significant alterations and different changes in metabolism. So the next one that can correlate to that is the large glucose consumption by tumor cells, which is the Warburg effect, results in an increased lactate generation and poor energy production. Um, In this one, the effects of cachexia. So it can actually alter the protein and lipid metabolism, as well as the absorption metabolism of the body. So because of the other malignancies, they can induce this by the, in addition to what I will say is they can induce cachexia by the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So some tumors often induce this systematic inflammatory response that can actually harm and alter metabolisms and processes in the body. So in response to the animal's biology increase in gluconeogenesis, so this can further deplete the energy and cause the muscle and fat breakdown. So this is the clinical sign of cachexia, which involve in other malignancies as well. So, like I said earlier, in etiology in anemia, there is the interleukin and the tumor necrosis factor. So, these are pro inflammatory cytokines, which are harmful in the body that are released by released by the malignancies and can easily or like um, induce faster the signs of cachexia. Now let's talk about renal cell carcinoma. So in kidneys, they have a normal production of erythropoietin. However, if you have a renal cell carcinoma, there is an increased chance, as seen in the diagram, there is an increased amount of erythropoietin, which can lead to increased amount of RBCs or polycythemia. So, in renal cell carcinoma, even if there is a increased erythropoietin and there will be a increased RBC, which will need a negative feedback that there is too much RBC, the erythropoietin will not stop and it will still increase its amount. So, the next is the renal cell carcinoma can produce PTHRP or the parathyroid hormone related protein. So, just like in the earlier given malignancies, they can also produce this. So, what this does in the body is it can also increase the serum calcium level. So, if there is a high serum calcium level, there will be a low excitability and can cause the body to have a lethargy, signs of being sick or feeling low. However, if there is a low serum calcium level, there will be a hyper excitability, which can cause spasm. So another one is there's renal cell carcinoma can also produce AST and ALT, high amount of AST and ALT. So it's not just the liver, as explained. Based on our research study, kidneys can also produce AST and ALT, and because of the renal cell carcinoma, it can increase the amount, which is risky in the body and can cause um, different different signs that can affect the system, the metabolism, or the hemostasis of the body. So these are another examples of the paraneoplastic syndrome, pathophysiology that can also secrete erythropoietin. So I'll explain this briefly because it will be just a short discussion about the two squamous cell carcinoma and small cell lung cancer. So let's start with squamous cell carcinoma. So secretes parathyroid hormone relating protein, which has the same as I said earlier in the earlier explanations or the hypercalcemia. It can also increase high serum calcium, just like the parathyroid hormone. So because of this, it will decrease the natural parathyroid hormone in the body, causing a negative feedback. So next is the small cell lung cancer. So firstly, small cell lung cancer can secrete ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. So because of this, it will secrete a much amount of cortisol that can cause Cushing syndrome. So um, it will like retaliate or disrupt the proper function of the body. And it can also secrete antidiuretic hormone or ADH. As in here, it can increase it or more like secrete it in its own cell, and it can cause syndrome of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone. So because of this, the SIADH or the syndrome of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone, it can lead to hyponatremia in the body. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Epiphany Joseph A. Marudo, and now we will talk about the diagnosis of paraneoplastic syndrome. Diagnosis, physical exam, and blood test need to be carried out to diagnose the paraneoplastic syndrome. The physical exam is very important para matukoy or ma-determine yung mga physical symptoms ng paraneoplastic syndrome, such as pagpayat ng dogs or cats, pagpapaltos ng mga pus nila or yung mga paltos sa katawan, or inflammation. Also, meron tayong mga further test na ginagamit, imaging and electrophysiology. Ang imaging o radiograph studies tulad ng CT scan, MRI, or PET scans ay nakakatulong para makita yung mga possible tumor or metastasis na maaring magdulot ng paraneoplastic syndrome. Next is the electrophysiology. This electrophysiological test is also very helpful in determining the abnormality sa nervous system. Now, there are common tests for paraneoplastic syndrome. First one is antibody test. This test is used to determine the specific na antibodies sa blood na maaring magbigay sa atin ng signs or symptoms sa paraneoplastic syndromes. Next is hormone test. This hormone test is also very helpful to determine yung mga hormone na maaring nasa abnormal levels dahil sa cancer or tumors. Because ang mga tumors can release a hormone na hindi normal sa katawan. Ang tawag doon ay ectopic hormones. The ectopic hormones levels are the PTHRP or the parathyroid hormone related peptide, the ACTH or adrenocorticotropic hormone, and ADH, the antidiuretic hormone. Next is cerebrospinal fluid analysis. This analysis is used to determine the presence ng mga abnormal cells or proteins na nakapalibot sa ating brain and spinal cord. Also, protein electrophoresis of serum and CSF is also used to give us information tungkol sa abnormal proteins na maaring nagpapahiwatig na may malignancy or may paraneoplastic syndromes yung patients. Next is the assay of paraneoplastic antibodies. This assay is also used to determine the specific antibodies na napoproduce ng immune system bilang tugon sa mga cancer or tumor. Ang mga antibodies na ito ay maaring nagpapahiwatig ng pagkakaroon ng isang paraneoplastic syndrome. Now we will talk about the associated condition and confirmation test. Associated condition of paraneoplastic syndrome and confirmation test. The paraneoplastic syndromes are conditions that arise due to the effect of cancer on the body, even when the symptoms are not directly related to the tumor itself. Here are the some common associated conditions. First is the hypercoagulability or increased blood clot formation. Why hypercoagulability is associated condition of paraneoplastic syndrome? Because cancer cells or tumors ay nag-release ng substance that increase blood clotting. For instance, some tumors produce proteins that weaken the body's natural anticoagulants na nagli-lead to hypercoagulability. This condition also can result in thrombosis or blood clots, potentially causing complication such as deep vein thrombosis or pulmonary embolism. The confirmatory test for this is the D-dimer test. The purpose of this test is the elevated D-dimer levels indicate active clot formation and breakdown, which is common in hypercoagulable states associated with cancer. The next one is thrombophilia testing. Yung thrombophilia testing is to identify the mutation like factor V Leiden or prothrombin G2021-0A mutation. Also, detecting the antibodies like lupus anticoagulant, anti-cardiolipin, and beta-2 glycoprotein 1 antibodies. The second one associated condition is anemia or lack of red blood cells. Why it occurs or why it is associated condition of paraneoplastic syndrome? Because the cancer and the treatment can cause anemia by damaging the bone marrow na nagkakos ng blood loss or leading to nutritional deficiency. And cancer cells may also release a cytokines that reduce the production of red blood cells or also can cause chronic disease anemia. The confirmatory test for this one is COMS agglutination test or direct antiglobulin test. The purpose of this test is to detect the presence of antibodies or complement proteins attached to the surface of the red blood cells. This is also a crucial in diagnosing autoimmune hemolytic anemia, which can occur as a secondary effect of an underlying malignancy in paraneoplastic syndrome. The third one is hypercalcemia. Hypercalcemia is high levels of calcium in the blood. So why it is associated condition of paraneoplastic syndrome? Because some cancer cells ay nag-release ng parathyroid hormone-related peptide or PTHrP na that lead to elevated calcium levels in the blood. Hypercalcemia can also result from the bone marrow metastasis or other paraneoplastic factors. The confirmatory tests are parathyroid hormone PTH measurement. The purpose of this is to identify the inappropriate calcium levels by measuring the PTH. Next is the parathyroid gland ultrasound. The purpose of this is to identify the tumors or abnormalities in the parathyroid gland. Tas yung vitamin D levels. The purpose of the test is to check the 25-hydroxy vitamin D levels to rule out vitamin D intoxication or supplementation as cause of hypercalcemia. The fourth one of associated condition of paraneoplastic syndrome is cachexia. Cachexia is severe muscle and weight loss. Why it occurs? Because cachexia is a complex condition involving chronic inflammation, metabolic changes, and hormonal imbalances. caused by cancer. The systemic inflammation and altered metabolic processes ay nagle-lead ng muscle wasting and weight loss. Then, ang confirmatory test ay dual energy X-ray absorptiometry or DEXA. The purpose is to assess the body composition, specifically the loss of lean muscle mass and fat, which are key features of cachexia. Then, next one is the anthropometric measurement. The purpose of that is to evaluate the physical body measurement such as weight, height, body mass index, and mid-upper arm circumference to assess the nutritional status and monitor changes over time in patient with cachexia.
Treatment and management of a patient with paraneoplastic syndrome will depend on the type, severity, and the location of the tumor. If possible, surgery may be done to remove the tumor. Chemotherapy and radiation therapy may also be an option if surgery is not possible. For some patients where the underlying tumor cannot be removed or treated, management of the clinical signs and treatments to improve the quality of life will be planned. Early detection and treatment are key to improve the quality of life and survival in affected animals.